Yo, I am Root, aka the Culture Black Kid. This is Root and Friends, where we review the latest releases from the Aussie and Oceanic scene. Today we are going to touch on Bolu Perth and Aussie Legends Complete, and their latest album, Nothing to Show, which is, I think, the sixth project that is
Yeah,
dropped, at least according to DSPs. I know that you on your stream said there was a mixtape, like a collab mixtape that he also
yeah,
had.
yeah.
So yeah, sixth project, and like I said, this is Real Friends, so I had to bring a homie with me. Please introduce yourself and what you do.
I go by the name of Chazza, aka the Skinny Legend. I am most people will know me for doing my reviews and reactions to Australian hip hop primarily,
Mhm.
but also do hip hop music myself and many other things. So yeah, pleasure to be here.
Always good to chop it up with you, man. It's been a minute, but
Yeah, man.
I'm glad to get you on this one. So yes, complete, nothing to show. Been about 5 years since the last project. What is your one sentence or initial thoughts that encapsulates the entire listening experience?
Um, One sentence. Complete is definitely the king of the West.
Okay.
And I say that because not only has he got the respect of his peers in Perth and
Mhm.
from West Australia, but I think just across the country. I think
Mm.
anyone who knows about Complete, whether you're, his number one fan or whether you've just heard of him, I think a lot of people can collectively agree that he is one of the better rappers.
Mhm.
And some will say the best, and I'm not mad at that statement.
Mhm.
He's put in the years, he's put in the work. And and also as a little bonus, he's just a genuinely nice guy. So that that goes a long way in my books.
For
Where
sure.
going into this album, yeah, it was 5 years since the last one, and it was strange to me because I didn't think it was that long since he last put out a full body of work.
Mhm.
Um, because he's been doing tracks, he's been doing singles with videos, and he always
Mhm.
puts a ton of effort into them. So it never feels like he throws something out half-assed. It
Yeah.
feels like everything he puts out, he puts his full effort into,
Yep.
and you
Yep.
can definitely feel that from this project here.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, what are we doing? We doing the overall thoughts? Are we
I'll
diving into this?
I'll hit you with mine. I'll hit you with my overall thought, and
Go
then
on.
we'll go into some pros. So,
All right.
um, my overall thoughts is, yeah, I hear that. And actually, before I say this first sentence, I do want to say that I'm definitely leaning on Chazza as the expert a bit more with Complete, as well as in the Sonic world as well. The first thing I wrote is I would have really enjoyed this in high school. If I was in high school,
Yes.
I would
Yeah.
have
Yeah. Yeah.
enjoyed
Yeah.
this
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much more.
What
But
do you mean? What would you mean by that though? Because I know
um,
what you mean.
I think that uh, with the artist that I was listening to at the time, which is Eminem, 50 Cent, all that, just say
Yeah.
very broad. It's a very broad. I
Yeah.
know there's a lot
Yeah.
more specific, but that, as well as, you know, teenagers have, their angsty, a little more angsty teenage stuff. Even me being at a private school where it's the most prestige maybe in the area, but I'm still like, ooh, I'm a tough MF motherfucker
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah. I get what
And
you
it's
mean.
like, whatever.
Just to touch on that point very quickly, and I'll
Yep.
let you continue. I
Yep.
was the same in terms of I enjoyed the Hopsins, the Tech Nines, the Whit Lowrys,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
that kind of side of rap. So I know what you're getting at.
For
But yeah.
sure, for sure. So I think high school me would have absolutely loved this. I said it took me a number of listens and some reflection on the content to get a bit more on board. But I think now that I've run through it a number of times, I think I have a number of things that I do really enjoy that I'm like, okay, give me maybe a few even more listens. And I'm like, I appreciate
Mm.
that a lot. Maybe not my favorite thing, but still cool. And then a couple of things where I'm like, nah, I'm okay. I think I'll leave that for maybe a more diehard fan would be a lot more appreciative of this, but unfortunately, it wouldn't be something that I return to. So with that being said, let's get into some of the pros of the project. Yeah, Jazza, I'll let you cook.
All right. So I mean, I have notes on everything, and for those who were in my live stream, I was doing the live stream where I was doing my first listen through to this,
Mm-hmm.
and it got taken down due to copyright, which Complete has kindly reached out and is working on clearing that for those
Dope.
to watch it.
Shout
So
out.
when that's out, try to check on my channel. Um, yeah, I mean, look, this project obviously has clear themes of loneliness,
Mm-hmm.
struggle, self-doubt, etc., and that definitely is one of Complete's strengths, is
Mm-hmm.
talking about his vulnerabilities, talking about his shortcomings, and
Great.
and how he battles with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of the better tracks on this project are the ones that lean into that. I mean, tracks like Mr. Memo, tracks like Nothing to Show,
Mm-hmm.
tracks like If I Fall. I really think he
Yeah.
shines on those kind of cuts because of exactly that. And that's not to say he can't rap his ass off either.
For sure.
In terms of just being able to go 96 bars, no hooks, no choruses, just go.
Yep.
Complete can do that really well. And I've always
Mm-hmm.
talked about his flows and how he has multisyllabic rhyming and how
Yeah.
he can create this mad imagery. And, you know, I do, I'll get into certain parts of that during the cons.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of pros, yeah, in terms of rapping performance, I can't really dig that much out from it. It's just fundamentally solid across the board. One thing that I was almost surprised about is how strong some of the hooks are.
Okay.
Complete natural tone doesn't strike me as someone who can really give me solid melodic hooks. And although he's not giving an Adele, Alicia Keys-esque performance,
Yep. Yep.
I was surprised with how catchy these hooks are. And I was quite impressed with some of the vocal delivery, despite me not expecting it from him. And again, not like, I think because I had zero expectation on that front, that's why I'm quite impressed. I think if I went in with an expectation, I might have not been as much. But I was finding myself that he had some great hooks. Mr. Memo, Crybaby, Mean, Lonely.
Mm-hmm.
Like, through a different variety of moods as well, not just the moodier cuts, like Crybaby has a more light-hearted, fun tone to it. And as simple as it is, I do find myself, humming along to it.
Yeah.
And the kind of hooks that you memorize by the end of the song. One listen through and you've already got a strong idea. And that's a sign of a good hook, in my opinion. If it can stick in your head after one listen, you've got a winner there. So I think that's something that I was quite impressed with. Yeah, I'd say that's my main pros, and I have a couple more, but I can't mention them without some of the cons.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, I'm gonna dovetail off a couple of things you said. Obviously, ability is very much there for those who, know it's obvious.
Yeah.
Storytelling, yeah. Especially for the person, like anything that's super personal, it's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
really well detailed. I'm very much a novices. I'm very much a novice on complete story. So anything that he's talking about, I'm like, okay, maybe I need to following this, or even with more listens, going back into discography, need to do my research a bit more. But still, the way it's worded in, like you said, songs like Mr. Memo, Nothing to Show, Mama Knows Best, I'm like, wow, okay, like this is some dope, like, breaking down of the current mindset that he is in. There are a couple bars that I enjoy, just to name a couple. Like, I love the Fat Lady Sings bar in the opening track. Hilarious way to end that one. And I laughed when I heard that Ludacris bar in Shush, as well.
Yeah.
I think I was sleeping on the back half on the first couple listens, and then I listened a couple days ago and was like, wow, the where is it? Lights Out, Mama Knows Best, Dear Life, If I Fall, Endgame is such a solid run in that back half.
Yeah.
So I really like that. And finally, I'd be remiss to say that I am a huge Set Century fan. And I
Yes.
absolutely love his verse on Mean. It's probably my favorite
100%.
feature verse on the whole project.
Yeah, I agree. I am going to interject very quickly. It's
Yeah,
very reminiscent of Seth Sentry's "Play It Safe" track, and
it
when I
is.
heard it, I was instantly drawing for it, and I was asking chat. I was like, "Chat, what song does this remind me of?" Like you guys know, and I was saying it's the one where they film it in the school, and
I
he's
was
like,
sitting there like,
yeah, and you know, once they said it straight away, I was like, yeah, Eve, you know, I can imagine what the music video would look like to
yep,
this song,
yep.
and it leans into Seth's lane and
Mhm.
complete kind of steps into his world, and it just is such a brilliant tongue-in-cheek kind of humor, and
100%.
just yeah, I agree, I really do find that one of the standout tracks.
Definitely, definitely. And just them as a, the chemistry between Seth and Complete is excellent. Like,
Yeah,
I think the last time I heard them on a track, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was the Transylvania, the remix,
that
um,
sounds about right. Yeah,
with Nerve and Sesta, and I really enjoyed that track. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, no, shout out to what Seth delivered. Actually, that does go into like a more transitional question, but just a final question on the
Mhm.
before we go into maybe some cons is there another feature that stood out to you that you're like, wow, like that really was dope?
In terms of features, I mean, Dundee had a really strong verse on Gladiators. I was quite impressed with him. And you know, Dundee had a great album recently in his project Anthems.
Hmm.
But Dundee, yeah, really did stand out to me. I feel like the other feature I was really impressed with was Greasy on Dear Life. I think he
Hmm.
just did a really solid job, and Greasy now being signed to Complete new label, Move
Hmm.
Over,
Yep.
is also a another positive to come out from this. So I quite enjoyed their cut on this.
Hmm. No, for sure, for sure. What do you think of the King Crooked verse? I'm just curious.
The on Perish,
Yeah.
I okay, that track is one I'm slowly transitioning into cons here a little bit.
Mm.
That track for me was a good track. And
Yep.
it had, you know, it had that boom bap steez, and there was a strong presence from both of them.
Hmm.
But by that point in the album, I started to wonder about pacing and
Mm.
track listing.
Yep.
And this is where it's both a pro and a con for me. The pro is in terms of pacing, in terms of mood and energy, I think it does a really good job of creating what I've always described as the roller coaster effect,
Yes.
having those ups and downs, those twists and turns, and
Hmm.
you know how it can take such a sharp turn from
Hmm.
something something like Mean with
Hmm.
Seth Sentry being fun and happy, and then going into a storytelling track as harsh and as deep as Without a Trace,
Hmm.
you know, and it's such a sharp
Open.
contrast in
Yep.
energy to then lighten the mood up with Open My Mouth and it being
Yep.
this fun, like drum and bass rock kind of track. And it's just, you know, everyone have
Yeah.
fun.
Yep.
And so, you know, this album does a really good job of doing that.
Hmm.
My issue with that is narratively, I feel like it can sometimes feel a bit all over the place.
Hmm. I get you.
This, based on the title of the album and the artwork that's given, nothing to show. Okay, so we're talking about those introspective, more negative aspects of our mental health.
Hmm.
And although I feel like we need these more fun, lighter cuts to change the pace of things, it feels like it just cuts in and out of those deeper cuts.
Hmm.
Now, you may argue, oh, well, that's a truer reflection of what mental health and dealing with mental health can be like. You know,
Yep.
you have your ups and downs as life goes on. So there's definitely an answer there, I guess, that I've made up myself that
Hmm.
would make sense. But I do feel like at times you're really diving in and understanding the character of Complete, whether you've listened to him for years,
Hmm.
since, you know, Bloodstained Nikes, or whether this is your first impression of him.
Hmm. Yep.
But it does feel like at times you're getting into a groove with one thing and then it's like, oh, okay, now we're over here. Okay, so last track we're talking about not wanting to wake up in the morning. And then this track it's, yeah, but I'm just going out with the boys.
Yeah.
And again, it's like a pro and a con in the same breath. It's so
Yeah.
amazing how he is just able to be so versatile that you
Yeah.
can give us both. But then I also feel like as the project goes on, I am a little bit like, okay, narratively, it does feel a little bit messy for me.
Hmm. I get you. I get you. All right. I guess seeing as we're there, is there any other cons that you want to touch on?
I mean, it in terms of cons, there would be nitpicky things.
Okay.
I feel like on the outro track Funeral,
Mhm.
it's cool. I really like the flow that he opens the track with and continues throughout the majority of the track.
Mhm.
But I feel like it gets dragged on a little too long. And I feel
Mhm.
like, especially with the subject matter and the cool concept that the song is, being at your own funeral,
Yeah.
I'd rather him just talk more freely about it. And I feel like he kind of stenciled himself into using that flow the entire way.
Mhm.
Um, I feel like there were a couple of features I weren't overly mad on. I'm
Mhm.
definitely going to cop some backlash for this, but I wasn't that wowed by the Mike Righteous feature.
Mhm.
Maybe that's because, as being someone from the UK, Mike Righteous definitely has his fans. I could never say he doesn't,
Mhm.
but I feel like he has a more respect from the Australian, New Zealand side than he does here in the
Interesting.
UK in certain aspects,
Mhm.
in terms of he doesn't get the mainstream attention.
Yeah.
So he's definitely still seen as an underground artist, I suppose. That would be my perspective on it, at least. Like I said, still definitely has his fans, but then the nature in which he's talking about of I'd shut the whole scene down. It's like, in my opinion, no, you wouldn't. And it's not to take away from his ability, but
Mhm.
in terms of social standing, I wouldn't necessarily agree as much.
True.
I mean, look, I could go through a nitpick throughout a bunch of tracks, little things that I weren't
Mhm.
huge fans of, and there's plenty of other positives that I still have here. But to summarize, I just think that, yeah, for me, that final act, almost, if we split it into thirds, that third act that you saying you was kind of sleeping on,
Mhm.
I agree that there's definitely really good songs in there,
Yeah.
but I feel like we've had that song already earlier in the project. For example, that outro track, I would swap out with the self-titled track, Nothing to Show. I feel like
Mhm.
that would work great as an outro track
Oh,
itself.
100%. Yeah.
And yeah, there's just certain tracks where I'm like, that doubles up with another. And this is a 19 track album. And I mean, great. If you're a complete stan, this is amazing. You've got over an hour of listening of just bang,
Yeah.
consistent content. For me, I would rather have it been a 45-minute listen, being around 15 tracks or so. For me
Yeah.
personally, I feel like it just went on a tiny bit too long.
Yeah. I
But
agree.
definitely not an absolute chore to listen through either.
Mhm.
I'd be lying to say that, I'm tearing my eyes and ears out, going through the process of this. But yeah, it does drag on just a little bit for me.
No, for sure. And I agree. Length does hit me as well, as especially, you know, coming into it as someone who isn't, like you said, like a complete stan, or someone who consistently listens to this subsection of hip hop on a consistent basis. So like I said, maybe the first couple listens, I was like, "Ooh, okay, let me, keep it going. Let me keep it going." But like I said, a few more times I'd listen, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm starting to get the pacing. I'm starting to know what's coming up. I know that this turn is here, and then this turn, and then goes
Yeah.
up and down like this. So I think that helped, but I do agree that it was a bit long. I think 15, maybe 13 for me, or 12, 13 for me would be killer.
Yeah.
But yeah, length. Yeah, I definitely
and
thought,
and that can
yeah,
also be seen as a positive in some ways, that
sure.
Complete is such a captivating talker that
Hmm.
you really want to listen to what he's saying. You don't want it to just be background music.
No,
It's
no, no,
not
no, no.
that kind of music.
Mm-mm.
Okay, I'm not here for a vibe. I'm here to lock in and experience
Yeah.
something. And I feel like it's it's not an easy listen.
Mm-mm.
It's a tough listen.
Mm-hmm.
And, it is eased by, like I said, some of the tracks are more lighter-hearted, some of the
Mm-hmm.
hooks are really cool and catchy, but
Mm-hmm.
ultimately it's a lot of heavy content and it's
Yeah.
a lot of heavy subject matter. So it is a lot to take in sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what contributes to the lengthy feeling listen.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, to touch on a couple of mine as well. Um, Unfortunately, I don't think a lot of the singles in the lead up to this really actually got me, to be honest. Um, I the first time I listened to Crybaby, I wasn't really the biggest fan. It took me until actually I think until I watched your stream, where I was like, and just kind of seeing your reaction to it that made me go, okay, I think I get it. As well as the video and like maybe just deepening some of the lyrics and the way the hook is performed, that I'm like, okay, I think I'm getting it. But one that I don't think will get me as much as the storytelling and the is super intense is Without a Trace. Personally, if there is it's hard to compare because they're two different stories, but just for the sake of the argument, I think Taxi from the previous album, the way it was paced in a similar vein, where it started super calm, gets in the taxi, hey, I'm going, how's your evening being, blah 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 blah, by the way, you're the guy that fucked up, I'm gonna kill you now, is like, whoa. Like, I was driving,
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
yo, you caught me off guard. As much as, it's like, okay, I kind of assumed it was kind of going that way, but I was still like, whoa, that was the story.
Yeah.
Holy shit, that was crazy. But because Without a Trace comes in full 100 from the jump, it's kind of like, ooh, you kind of caught me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's a super interesting story, definitely captivating, but I think it comes in too strong off the rip.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted that journey the same way that Taxi takes me on a bit more of a journey.
Yeah. Agreed.
So that, I, again, personally, as I've mentioned earlier in the review, I'm a huge Seth Century fan. I really enjoy Open My Mouth and Dog the Boys. I think they are definitely tongue-in-cheek, really fun songs. But personally, I think I would have enjoyed them a bit more if there were Seth Century songs, or hear what Seth Century would have done on those type of takes.
Yeah.
And I kind of get what you mean from your you said on the live stream about the fast rapping in Shush, where it's like,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Complete.
Yeah.
We know you're one of the best rappers in the country, and again, 16-year-old me would have ate that up.
Yep.
Would have absolutely ate up the rappity rap, but a bat pat,
Mhm.
but a bat that 100%. But personally, I'm just past the point of that. Complete doesn't need to prove that he can rap because he can. And again, I agree there. Yeah.
No, for sure. But yeah, I think those were my cons. Again, I feel like if I go on any more, it's just like you said, nitpicky.
Yeah,
Stuff.
I'd say one thing I disagree with you. I do
Mhm.
really like the singles that he picked. I feel like they give a good representation of what the album is. I think
sure.
we're definitely got a thing for the Seth Century track. Mean. I feel like that could have easily been one of the singles that could have had a video.
I agree.
But otherwise, I personally feel like he picked the right videos to the right singles to do a video for and kind of really push. Compared to the rest, I wouldn't say they're the weaker cuts. So I actually quite liked the singles he picked for this project.
For sure. And again, if you're putting it in context with just where I was then when the singles came out and where I am now that the full body of work is out and I've heard the rest of the songs and, done a little bit more research, made myself a little bit more knowledgeable. Back then I was a lot more in an ignorant mindset, or like I haven't, again, listened to this subset of hip hop in a minute. So I'm like, okay, it's a bit jarring coming off listening to, other Aussie acts that I listen to a lot more consistently. Who is more in the Marley Jose, or like the, I don't know, Zion Garcia realm.
There's so
Isaac
many you could
Pirog.
name, and that would be almost a whole different side that plenty of people that are complete fans that may even be watching this are like, who are they? And it would be, that would be something that they might not be as into. I hope that they are, and I'd encourage you to go listen to those artists. But unfortunately, with how Australian hip hop is, it is quite segregated, and we don't cross over a huge ton. So I feel like there is just a lane for complete, and there's a certain amount of rappers that embody that kind of scene. And I feel like we should be crossing over more, etc., etc. But for this current point in time, that's what the landscape looks like. So yeah, 100%. It's there's only a handful of us, I'd like to say, that do crossover between the different subgenres and cliques and different scenes within a giant, a broader picture.
For sure. And if there's one thing that I hope complete fans can take from at least my takes on stuff, it's that I don't want to be ignorant. I'd love to learn. Please let me know. Please put me on game. And I'm more than open to being wrong about takes. I'm more than happy to listen to this project again in 6 months and be like, dang, I was sleeping on this, or I was wrong about this take. And you know, that goes for any other artist, period, that I listen to that I'm not as knowledgeable on, because like you said, we should cross over more in the Australian scene. It's sad that, you know, it's a lot more you, like you said, segregated and separated and whatnot. But you know, that's why we have these discussions to,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
I'm jumping into, you know, something that I'm going maybe out of my comfort zone, slightly out of my comfort zone,
Yeah.
but to talk about something that, or an artist that I'm not as knowledgeable on, but am willing to learn, because otherwise, you know, we just kind of be people who just go, nope, I'm not
Yeah.
going to listen to it. This sucks, you know, blah, 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 blah. But you've never
Yeah.
experienced it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I'd say the final comment that I want to make on that is, you know, I think Complete understands his audience. I think Complete understands his own style. And I don't think he's trying to reach out to more people. I think it's no, I've done this for long enough now. This is what I bring to the table, and I'm doing the best version of what I bring. And if you want to tap into that, hey, more than welcome to.
Yeah.
But if not, fine. It's just not for you. And I feel like, yeah, Complete's definitely at that point where he's not trying to be worldwide. I think he understands his audience, he understands his lane, and just sticks to that, and does it really well, in my opinion.
For sure. For sure. All right, let's kind of get into the final rating. So for you, and for those who don't know, just to remind you, this is my rating system. So you are either here for this, it depends on the day whether you're here for this or not, or unfortunately you are not here for this. So Chazza, what would you rate this complete album?
It's so tough because I don't want that middle ground of some days I'm here for this to be seen as a negative thing. But I'm going to go with that purely because there is a time and place for this album. And when I'm in that mood to listen to something like this, 100% I'm here for it. And I felt the same about his previous album. His previous album was very similar in terms of, I think that is an amazing project, but I wouldn't listen to it as often as I would listen to another album, despite I think it being better than that other album that's easier to listen to. So I feel like that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's not something that I want to listen to every day of the week. I don't want to listen to this mood every day of the week. But when I am, it definitely will be one of the stronger cuts. So that's where I'm kind of, sitting with it at the moment. Maybe it will grow on me over time. Maybe I'll distance myself from it. But at this current point, no, there's definitely a time and place for it.
For sure, for sure. And I have to agree. You know, again, maybe with the bit of a introduction, or like when I first pressed play, I was like, oh, I'm not sure. I don't think this is something I can do. But I think the more I've listened to it, the more, again, like I said, have made myself slightly less ignorant. I'm like, okay, you know, I think it depends on the day whether I'm here for this or not as well. But let me know what you guys out there think. Are you here for this? Is this not really for you? Let me know. Chazza, thank you so much for jumping on this review. I was super keen for this, and I'm glad that we could
likewise.
really jump
Appreciate
into this.
you having me, man.
For sure, for sure. Here's where I let the people know, well, what's happening, what you're coming up, where to find you, all that.
Chazza on YouTube. I am Chazza. I'm sure everything will be linked below, etc., etc. But ultimately, YouTube's best place to find me. I'm not a TikTok sensation quite yet, so anything Chazza, that's where you can find me. At the moment, trying to do weekly live streams. If copyright will let me get away with it, and that's about it, man. That's all I've got to say. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. Chazza, I am Root, okay, the Culture Black Kid. I'll catch you next time. Peace.
Peace.